Hi, this is Pierre de la Côte, working at Planet Technologies. Teams is deployed a lot recently because of the coronavirus, and since we all forced to work from home, then Teams is becomes mandatory for a lot of us. And when you deploy a technology which is mandatory for whatever reason, even if people are using another technology before, um, then there's two reactions. The first reaction is, okay, I'm used to it, I'm fine with it, I'm go with it, it's fine. And the other reaction, which can be a lot of people, is a lot of frustration and a lot of frustration of being forced to use a new technology that you don't know, that you're you're not familiar with. And I've heard a lot of people saying, I hate this, I hate that. And that's the first reaction. I hate it, and so I think it's the main problem is that they didn't have time to ramp up, and it's really stressful to have to ramp up on a new technology. So that's normal. I will say it's normal. Um, so how can you help those people to feel better? So best, I think the only answer to that is to help them and to help them by practicing. And the best way to do that is to do some training. So try to do some trainings, short trainings. That's what I'm doing. So here I'm gonna give you some advice on how I train people on Teams. So basically, when I train people on Teams, um, I there are 6 sections in my training. So depending on the people, one can be different from the other. But the 6 sections are: first, I explain why. Why are you being trained? Why Teams is there? What is the purpose of Teams? So better understand the big picture of why Teams is there. Uh, might be because we have to work from home, so we need a tool, and the tool is Teams. That's not really a good purpose, but it's the truth sometimes, a lot of time. But you can also relate this why to also maybe a global purpose, which can be we're forced to work remotely, so we need a tool, but we also want to work more collaboratively, more transparently, because of this and these reasons. So first the why, and then uh, the what. So definitely what people want to know is what it is. What is Teams? And because Teams is a lot of things, so you need to describe Teams. And the good analogy, I don't know who invented that, but the good analogy is to compare Teams to a house. So when you invite people to a team, you invite them in a house. In the house, there are rooms. So the rooms are the channels. The house is the team. So people who are invited to the house can go in every room and work together, except if there's a lock on the room. So it's a private channel. I know that private channels are not available in GCC, for example. It's available in commercial tenant, but so depending if you're working in a for government or federal whatever, which is in GCC environment or GCCI or DoD, they won't have that feature, so you don't talk about that. But in commercial tenant, they will have the private channel, so it's room locked. So you can compare that, and then the third analogy was so in a house in a room there are appliances. like the microwave, the washing machine, or whatever, and they compare that to a tap. So I think it's a good analogy to start with to make people understand that, which is key to understand that when you're in a team, everybody has the same permission. They can walk in a room, in a channel, unless it's private, but usually they can walk in and they can do the same thing. They all have the same permission. So explain this, the what, the why, the what, and then you can train them. And then usually what I'm training them on is communication, collaboration, integration. Integration might not be really important right now, but sometimes when you have time later on, you will train them on how to integrate about an application within Teams. But I think the two main pieces are communication and collaboration. And I usually segment them, but if you feel comfortable to have a script that embed both of them, communication and collaboration, it will be perfect. So the communication is about using all the Teams meeting, the share desktop in your Teams meeting, and the chat and all the conversation and so on. So the way I do it, I teach people, is not by presenting what the tool is doing, is by emerging right away people in the tool. Most of the time, people are frustrated already because they were directly immersed in the tool and they didn't know what to do and they're lost. So I'm creating the same environment where people are lost, but they're all together. And so now we're working together. We're working live. Usually the training are remote now, although they're done by teams. That can be sometimes complicated to ask them to do something in teams that they cannot because they cannot launch two teams at the same time. But try to make them work in teams to learn teams. So practice, use teams as an enabler of the training, and practice within teams to use teams. So my really big advice here when you do trainings is not to show people features and then ask them to do the same thing. My advice is to give them a challenge to work on something and ask them to complete some tasks to achieve this challenge and all together. So that's the purpose of Teams. So for example, you can ask them to chat on a subject and then after a while they escalate using audio, and then after a while they escalate using video and maybe they share screen. And so when they do that, you ask, as an instructor, you ask them to invite you and you observe what they're doing, where they're struggling, and you tell them when they're struggling somewhere to pause and ask a question so everybody can benefit of the answer. And also they can benefit of the questions because they might not have the question on their they might not think about this question, but it might be a useful question for the rest of the of the of the of the team which is trained. So doing an exercise, a practice all together really triggers a lot of reactions, sometimes frustration, but at least you can address those frustration. So people let them feel safe that they can ask when they're struggling, and they, even if it's they feel maybe they feel a little bit dumb, but we won't judge. We're here to help. So be in a help mode when you do the training, especially when you're the trainer. So being in help mode So set the rules before starting the training and the practice, and do the practice. Do the practice, make a challenge. For the collaboration, for the communication, for every piece of the training, make them practice. So have an exercise where they can practice a lot of features. You don't want them to do everything. You cannot do everything. They will learn on their own by themselves. They will consume some videos to learn more, but you want to make them feel comfortable to do the first steps and also the essential steps. So what's it gonna do the most? Probably the meetings, um, the chats, and some collaboration. So you need to practice that, and I've 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 done that in the past with a customer who had a great idea, which was to um, build together a piece of art. And the so the challenge was in 45 minutes um, to regroup um, with 10 different users within the company, um, to regroup and build a PowerPoint together with different images representing a piece of art. So there was they chose a topic. Every time was different topic, I think, and they were creating a PowerPoint with different pieces of art, and they had to label every slide with a motto explaining what through these pictures or these paintings or these drawings or this sculpture, whatever art it was, piece of art it was, they were describing with a few words on the slide what it was, and they were doing that presentation, this deck all together at the same time. So they saw that working together, if they had to do that the usual way, so sending maybe image to somebody and then ask the person to do the deck by himself, and then have the person who does the deck send the deck to everybody in the team by email, and having everybody make some change and different version. So they realized doing that live in teams and collaborating on the same document live, while sometimes they were working synchronously, talking on the documents, sharing the documents, the PowerPoint deck live. They could change it live together, and sometimes it was asynchronous, so it was after the fact. Then they really realized, in a funny way, in a sort of funny way, they realized the power of having a tool like Teams, being able to work synchronously and asynchronously all together in the same document without having to manage the versioning and all the exchange and all the bad thing you can see when you're using email. So try to figure out what is the best scenario for you in terms of training, but the key takeaway here is to make people practice rather than showing them all the features uh, that are in Teams, because you can spend hours to show all the features in Teams, um, but it's not very efficient. Some people might be reassured to have seen all the features, but in fact they will be lost. If they don't practice, they will be lost. So focus on what is really key to start with, what people are going to work with every day or almost every day, what is really important, and then the added value, the added features like integrated bot, integrated application. You can either do all training, maybe 30 minutes training later on to work on a new topic, or you can share videos that explain the purpose, or you can ask the champions to do that later on. But first, in those times where you need to deploy the technology really fast and people are frustrated, and that's normal to be frustrated because when you deploy new technology and you don't have the time, you feel obligated to use the technology you didn't choose, so you're not very satisfied and you're frustrated. And as I stay starting this discussion, this video, I heard a lot of people saying, "I hate this, I hate that," and it doesn't really mean they hate it. It means they don't feel comfortable and they're frustrated because they're rushed and they have to ramp up on this. So as soon as you can, try to plan those practice, let's practice together sessions. Organize several of them, record some of them so that people can, if they cannot attend, at least they can see and figure out. But it's better to practice rather than just watch the video. But try to do that and make people practice the main features that they're going to use and where they struggle. So planning a meeting, attending a meeting, sharing screen, manage a meeting during the meeting, work with documents together. That's a basic conversation, add to that conversation, and then you will add features over and over to it. And my last recommendation for that, for deploying teams, is you need to have a team, a dedicated team that is open to everybody, which is public. You call it, for example, Team Help. And in this team, you have at least 2 channels, a general one, and one to ask questions. So everybody can ask that question and everybody can answer the question. Not only the help desk, but everybody should be able to help their peers answering the questions. And the general channel where people who have knowledge can share tips and tricks or share how they use Teams and where it's efficient for them. So that were my 2 suggestions to help deploy Teams and lower the frustration, which is perfectly normal. So you don't have to feel bad about it. It's normal to be frustrated when you receive a new technology, which is really rich and can be frustrating if you have not been psychologically prepared. That's why you need to train people. Hope that was helpful. If you have other advice, just add a comment on how to deploy teams quickly without without too much frustration. Thanks for watching.